The Australian bush does not always announce danger with speed, claws, or venom. Sometimes survival begins with stillness, with a heavy little body pressed low against warm earth, listening through the vibrations of a world that wants to eat it. The blue-tongue skink moves through this landscape like an animal built for patience rather than panic. Its body is broad, low, and muscular, covered in smooth scales that catch the sun in dull bands of brown, grey, gold, and cream. Against dry leaf litter, bark chips, spinifex shadows, and sunburnt soil, it almost disappears. It does not have the needle-fast sprint of a small dragon lizard or the climbing grace of a gecko. It is not designed to vanish upward into trees or launch itself across open ground. Its survival strategy is stranger, slower, and in some ways more intelligent. It turns the predator's own decision-making process into the battlefield. In the heat of the day, a blue-tongue skink may emerge from cover to warm itself, feeding on snails, beetles, fallen fruit, flowers, carrion scraps, and almost anything soft enough or slow enough to handle. That broad diet matters because this is not a specialist predator living on one narrow food source. It is an opportunist, a ground-level scavenger and forager that helps clean up small organic remains while also controlling invertebrates. Its blunt teeth and powerful jaws are useful for crushing snail shells and chewing tough plant material, but they are not weapons that can reliably stop a larger predator. A fox can overpower it, a monitor lizard can investigate it. A bird of prey can strike from above. A snake may read its movement through scent and vibration. The skink's daily life is therefore a constant trade between feeding, warming, hiding, and not being noticed for too long. Temperature shapes almost every part of that life. Like other reptiles, the blue-tongue skink depends on external heat to fuel movement, digestion, and alertness. In the morning, when the ground still holds the cool memory of night, the animal may be sluggish, its muscles not yet ready for sudden escape. Sunlight is not just comfort, it is energy. A basking skink is charging the system, raising its body temperature until its nerves fire faster, its digestion improves, and its movements become more controlled. But basking is also exposure. The same patch of sunlight that helps the skink function can make it visible to predators. This is one of the quiet pressures of reptile life. The animal must step into danger to become capable of surviving danger. That is why the blue-tongue itself is so brilliant as a defensive tool. It is not used constantly. It is hidden until the moment matters. Most of the time, the skink's mouth stays closed, and the animal remains visually ordinary, a slow, thick-bodied lizard blending into the muted colors of the ground. Then, the pressure changes. A predator comes too close. The skink cannot outrun it in open space, so instead of running first, it performs a sudden transformation. The body flattens, making the skink appear wider and harder to swallow. The mouth opens, a hiss pushes out, and then the tongue appears, vivid, glossy, startling blue, a color that feels almost impossible in the dry Australian scrub. That flash works because predators do not attack like machines. They assess. They hesitate. They compare what they see with what they have survived before. A predator looking for an easy meal wants low risk, not mystery. The blue-tongue skink creates mystery at exactly the right moment. The bright tongue may suggest poison, irritation, disease, or simply something unfamiliar enough to deserve caution. The skink does not need the predator to believe one perfect lie. It only needs to create uncertainty. In the wild, uncertainty has weight. A hungry animal can still afford a pause if the prey suddenly looks costly. That pause is where the skink's survival begins. The tongue is especially powerful because blue is rare in this ground-level world. The Australian bush is full of warning colors, but many of them appear as reds, yellows, oranges, blacks, and sharp contrasts. The blue-tongue skink's display feels different because it erupts from an otherwise plain animal. It is a hidden signal, not a permanent advertisement. This matters biologically. If the skink were brightly colored all over, predators might notice it sooner. Instead, the animal keeps its shock weapon concealed until a threat is already close enough for the display to dominate the predator's attention. It is a defensive reveal, almost like pulling a warning flag from inside the body. There is also a physical honesty behind the bluff. The skink may not be deadly, but it is not helpless. Its bite can be painful. Its body is difficult to grip cleanly because it is low, thick, and muscular. Its scales provide a smooth, armored surface, and its short legs allow it to wedge itself into cover, under logs, between rocks, or inside dense vegetation. A predator that attacks carelessly may not get the easy swallow it expected. The skink's display exaggerates this truth. It says, in biological language, "This meal may cost more than it is worth." That message does not need to be perfectly accurate to work. Evolution does not reward honesty for its own sake. It rewards signals that keep an animal alive long enough to reproduce. The defense becomes even more interesting when seen from the predator's side. A fox moving through grass is not just hunting with hunger, it is managing risk. A bird striking from above has only a moment to decide whether to commit. A snake or monitor lizard investigating the skink must judge whether the prey can be handled safely. The blue tongue interrupts that flow. It changes a simple attack into a question. Is this animal toxic? Is it sick? Is it dangerous? Is there a better target nearby? Predators that ignore warning signals too often do not get many chances to learn from mistakes. Predators that hesitate survive too, so the skink exploits a weakness built into intelligence itself, the need to evaluate. This is why calling the blue-tongue skink slow misses the point. It is slow in one dimension, but sophisticated in another. Speed is only one kind of survival. Some animals survive by outrunning danger. Some survive by hiding before danger arrives. Some survive by becoming too armored, too poisonous, too large, or too difficult to handle. The blue-tongue skink survives by controlling the moment between recognition and attack. It turns a predator's confidence into doubt. That is not a small trick. It is a defensive strategy shaped by millions of repeated encounters in grasslands, woodlands, gardens, scrub, and dry forest edges. Its role in human-altered environments makes the animal even more remarkable. Blue-tongue skinks often live near gardens, sheds, compost piles, fence lines, and suburban edges, where they find shelter and food, but also face new dangers. Domestic cats and dogs, lawn equipment, roads, and introduced predators have added pressures that did not shape the original version of this defense. A blue tongue may startle a wild predator, but it cannot stop a car. It may confuse a fox for a second, but not always a dog that attacks from excitement rather than calculated hunger. This is the hard truth behind many native survival strategies. Evolution prepares animals for natural patterns of danger, but modern landscapes change the rules faster than bodies can adapt. Still, when the display works, it is one of the cleanest examples of survival through perception. The skink does not become faster. It does not become venomous in that instant. It does not grow spines or armor plates. It changes what the predator thinks it is seeing. That tiny shift can be enough. The attacker pauses. The skink backs away. A gap opens between jaws and body. The lizard slides under leaf litter, into grass, beneath a log, or into the broken shadow of a rock. The whole encounter may last only seconds, but those seconds carry the logic of an entire evolutionary strategy. In a landscape where many animals survive by striking first, the blue-tongue skink survives by making the enemy think twice. Its strange blue signal is not decoration, not comedy, and not a random splash of color on a harmless body. It is a weapon aimed at attention itself. The skink shows that nature does not always favor the strongest fighter or the fastest runner. Sometimes it favors the animal that can create one perfect hesitation at the edge of death. On a sunlit stem in the Australian bush, a ladybird can look almost too small to matter. It moves over the surface of a leaf like a bright bead of paint that somehow learned to walk, its rounded shell catching the light in red, orange, yellow, or black. Around it, the world is enormous and hungry. Leaves tremble under the weight of ants, spiders patrol the folds of vegetation, small lizards scan from warm bark, and birds move through branches with the quick precision of animals built to notice anything edible. In that world, a ladybird seems like the kind of prey that should vanish instantly. It is small, slow compared with a fly, and easy to see. But that last detail is the point. The ladybird is not trying to disappear. It is trying to be remembered. Its bright body is a warning before it is decoration. In nature, color is often language, and few signals are as direct as the combination of red, orange, yellow, and black. These are colors that many predators learn to treat with caution because they often appear on animals that sting, taste foul, carry toxins, or punish careless curiosity. This warning system is called aposematism, but the idea is simple. The animal advertises that eating it may not be worth the trouble. A ladybird does not need claws or a terrifying bite. Its defense begins before contact, when a predator sees the color pattern and hesitates. That hesitation may come from instinct, but often it comes from experience. One bad meal can educate a hunter better than any warning could. The ladybird's protection is not imaginary. When disturbed, many ladybirds can release bitter, unpleasant chemicals from their leg joints, a behavior often called reflex bleeding. Tiny droplets of yellowish fluid appear, carrying alkaloid compounds that can taste foul and irritate the mouthparts or beak of a predator. To a bird expecting a soft, harmless insect, the experience can be surprisingly unpleasant. To a lizard, the sudden chemical taste may turn a quick snack into something worth spitting out. The ladybird may survive the encounter, but even when one individual does not, the message can still spread through predator memory. The next bright beetle may be avoided because the last one made the predator regret its confidence. That is what makes this defense so different from camouflage. The stick insect survives by being overlooked. The ladybird survives by being noticed correctly. It has placed its survival strategy inside the brain of the animal that might eat it. A predator does not need to understand chemistry to learn avoidance. It only needs to connect the visual pattern with a bad result. Bright shell, bitter taste, red and black, unpleasant mouth, orange spots, not worth trying again. Over time, this turns memory into a shield that protects not only one ladybird, but many ladybirds carrying a similar warning pattern. The defense becomes communal in a strange evolutionary sense. One individual's punishment can help protect another. The rounded shape of the ladybird adds to the effect. Its smooth, domed wing cases are not hard armor in the way a turtle shell is armor, but they do make the insect less delicate than it appears. The shell protects the folded wings beneath and gives the beetle a compact form that is not as easy to crush cleanly as a soft-bodied aphid. When threatened, a ladybird may tuck in its legs and antennae, becoming a small, hard, chemical-marked object instead of an easy, wriggling target. This is not enough to stop every predator, but it adds another layer to the calculation. The animal is visible, bitter, rounded, and awkward. For a hungry predator, there may be easier meals nearby, and there usually are. Ladybirds live in the same small jungle as aphids, scale insects, mites, eggs, larvae, and other soft-bodied prey. On a single plant, a tiny drama unfolds that most people walk past without noticing. Aphids cluster along stems and leaf undersides, feeding by tapping into plant sap. They reproduce quickly, sometimes explosively, turning new growth into a crowded feeding ground. The ladybird enters this world as a predator in miniature. Its jaws are built for seizing and chewing small prey, and its larvae are even more surprising than the adults. Ladybird larvae do not look cute or polished. They can look like tiny, dark alligators, bristling and active, moving through aphid colonies with a hunger that feels completely different from the gentle image people usually attach to ladybirds. This matters because the ladybird is not just a harmless symbol of luck in the garden, it is part of a living control system. By feeding on plant pests, many ladybird species help regulate populations that would otherwise weaken leaves, spread plant diseases, or drain resources from young growth. Their bright colors may make them famous, but their ecological role is quieter and more practical. A ladybird hunting through aphids is not performing for human eyes. It is transferring energy from plant-feeding insects into predator bodies, shaping how fast small herbivores can multiply and influencing the health of the plants beneath it. The insect is tiny, but its work sits inside a larger network of plants, prey, predators, and seasonal change. The warning colors also create opportunities for deception elsewhere in nature. When predators learn to avoid a certain color pattern, other animals may benefit by resembling it, even if they do not carry the same chemical defenses. This is mimicry, and it shows how powerful predator memory can become. A warning pattern can spread influence beyond the original animal. But that system only works if the warning remains reliable often enough. If too many harmless creatures copy the signal without carrying any punishment, predators may start testing the pattern again. Evolution is not a moral system. It is a constant argument between signal, cost, honesty, and deception. For the ladybird, the cost of honesty lies in being visible. Bright colors help educated predators avoid it, but they can also make the insect easier to detect by predators that have not learned the lesson. Predators that are desperate, or predators that are not bothered by the chemicals. Some spiders may still take ladybirds, some birds may sample them, some ants may harass them. A warning label does not make an animal untouchable. It changes the odds. That distinction matters. Nature is full of defenses that look perfect until the wrong enemy arrives. The ladybird's life also depends on temperature, plants, and timing. Like all insects, its body functions are shaped by warmth. On cooler mornings, movement may be slower. In warm sunlight, feeding and searching become more active. The insect must find prey, avoid danger, mate, lay eggs near food sources for its young, and survive changes in weather that can alter the entire plant community around it. Rain can wash small insects from leaves. Drought can reduce plant growth and shift aphid populations. Heat can speed life cycles, but also increase stress. The ladybird's bright shell is only the visible surface of a life tuned to tiny changes in the environment. Its eggs are often laid near prey, a practical decision that gives the young larvae immediate access to food after hatching. This is important because larvae cannot depend on the polished warning display of the adult form in the same way. They have their own shapes, colors, and defenses, and they must grow through stages before becoming the familiar rounded beetle. The transformation from larva to adult is not just cosmetic. It is a complete reorganization of the body, turning a crawling predator into a winged beetle capable of dispersing to new plants. That ability to fly matters when aphid colonies collapse or when new feeding opportunities appear elsewhere. A ladybird is not trapped on one leaf. It can search the landscape in miniature, moving from outbreak to outbreak. Seen closely, the ladybird's defense is almost elegant in its economy. It does not spend its life hiding like a twig. It does not inflate into a false monster like a frilled lizard. It does not flatten and threaten like a bearded dragon. It simply wears a message that many predators can learn to respect. The body says, "Remember me and regret me if you ignore the warning." That is a bold strategy for something so small. It turns visibility into protection, chemistry into education, and predator memory into future survival. The irony is that the ladybird's charm comes from the same signals that make it dangerous to eat. Humans see beauty where a predator may learn caution. The little red beetle on a green leaf feels harmless because we are too large to be punished by its bitterness in any meaningful way. But inside its own scale of life, those colors are serious. They are not decoration for a garden scene. They are a survival system written across a shell. In the wild, color can become a shield, but only because the world has eyes, memory, and consequences. The ladybird survives by making its body easy to recognize and hard to forget. A predator may win one encounter, but the bad taste can shape the next one. That is the quiet power of this insect. It does not fight the predator's body. It trains the predator's brain. In the Australian bush, survival does not always look dramatic. It does not always arrive as a venomous bite, a sudden sprint, a raised frill, or a flash of warning color. Sometimes the best defense is to become so ordinary that the world stops paying attention. Among dry branches, eucalyptus leaves, thin shadows, dead stems, and wind-broken twigs, the stick insect lives inside that quiet strategy. It does not ask to be feared. It does not try to overpower anything. It survives by entering the background so completely that a predator's eyes may pass over it without understanding what they have seen. A stick insect can look almost unfinished, as if the forest has drawn only the simplest outline of an animal. Its body is long, narrow, and angular. Its legs stretch into thin, jointed lines that resemble snapped stems. Many species carry dull browns, grays, greens, or bark-like patterns that match the plants around them. Some look fresh and leafy, others dry and brittle, like something already dead. That difference matters, because camouflage is not one trick. It is a relationship between the animal, the surface behind it, the light falling across it, and the mind of the creature hunting it. A stick insect that disappears perfectly on one branch may become painfully obvious on another. Its disguise is brilliant, but it is not invincible. Predators do not search the world evenly. A bird moving through foliage is not examining every twig with equal suspicion. It is looking for familiar signs of food, movement, symmetry, soft bodies, exposed legs, the shine of eyes, the curve of a head, the rhythm of breathing or feeding. The stick insect survives by removing those clues. Its body does not offer the easy outline of prey. Its legs do not read immediately as legs. Its stillness breaks the usual signal that says, living thing. In a landscape overloaded with lines and shadows, it becomes visual noise. That is the real power of its disguise. It does not need to fool the entire universe. It only needs to become less interesting than the next branch. This is camouflage as a form of neurological sabotage. The predator's brain is built to simplify a complicated scene. It cannot treat every leaf, twig, crack, and shadow as a possible animal, or hunting would become impossible. So, it filters. It prioritizes certain shapes and movements. It ignores what seems irrelevant. The stick insect survives by placing itself inside the ignored category. It turns the predator's efficiency against it. The bird is not stupid for missing the insect. The bird is doing exactly what a hunter must do, searching quickly, choosing likely targets, and saving attention for patterns that usually matter. The stick insect's genius is that it looks like something that usually does not. Stillness is the center of the whole performance. A hidden animal that moves at the wrong time becomes a confession. The stick insect often holds its body rigid for long periods, aligned with stems or leaf veins, letting sunlight and shadow slide over it. Some species sway gently when disturbed, or when the wind moves vegetation, copying the motion of twigs shifting in a breeze. This is not random wobbling. It is a careful kind of deception, because total stillness can also look suspicious when everything around it is moving. In a windy canopy, a motionless stick may stand out. By swaying with the background, the insect keeps the lie alive. Its body is built around that lie. Long limbs and narrow segments break the clean outline of an animal. Spines, bumps, and uneven textures can mimic bark scars, buds, or dried plant nodes. The head may be small and tucked into the shape of the body, reducing the obvious signs of a face. Even the slow, deliberate way it walks can help maintain the illusion. A fast dash might save a grasshopper for a moment, but for a stick insect, speed can destroy the entire strategy. Once the predator sees the twig walking, the magic is gone. So movement becomes cautious, often timed to darkness or cover, and feeding happens with the same careful restraint. At night, the stick insect's world changes. Darkness softens the visual hunting pressure from birds, and many stick insects become more active, feeding on leaves while the risk from daylight predators drops. But night is not safety. It only changes the enemy. Spiders, mantises, rodents, reptiles, and nocturnal birds may still hunt among the same branches. The insect's camouflage remains useful, but now scent, touch, vibration, and chance encounters matter more. A stick insect can hide from eyes and still be discovered by a hunter that brushes against it, follows plant movement, or searches by contact. Camouflage is powerful, but it is never a guarantee. It is a reduction in risk, not a force field. There is an almost brutal honesty in that. The stick insect's survival depends on a chain of small things going right. The correct background, the correct posture, the correct light, the correct moment of stillness. A patch of sun can sharpen its shadow and reveal the body. A drought can change the color of leaves around it, making a green insect stand out against dry brown foliage. New growth can make a bark-colored insect look misplaced. A gust of wind can flip a leaf and expose the underside where the insect is resting. Even the best disguise can fail, because the environment is always changing. The insect is not just hiding from predators. It is trying to keep pace with the mood of the plant world around it. Some stick insects have backup defenses, because evolution rarely trusts one solution completely. Certain species can drop from vegetation when disturbed, falling like a dead twig into the litter below. Others may release irritating chemicals, raise spined legs, or use body posture to make themselves harder to swallow. Some can shed a grabbed limb, sacrificing part of the body to escape the whole body being eaten. In several stick insect groups, lost legs may even be partly replaced during later molts if the insect is young enough. That detail reveals something important. These animals are fragile, but not helpless. Their first defense is invisibility. Their second defense is buying time when invisibility fails. Reproduction adds another strange layer to their story. Many stick insects lay eggs that resemble seeds, dropping them to the ground where they blend into soil, leaf litter, and plant debris. In some species, the eggs have structures that attract ants, which may carry them into nests. There, the developing insect gains accidental protection from fire, drying, and some predators before hatching and eventually leaving the nest. This kind of relationship is not friendship in the human sense. It is evolution exploiting an opportunity. The ant gains something seed-like to investigate or feed from. The insect egg gains transport and shelter. Even before the young insect becomes a stick, its survival may already depend on deception. When the young hatch, they enter a world where nearly everything is bigger. Their small bodies must immediately solve the same problem as adults: how to eat without becoming food. They climb into vegetation, feed, grow, and molt, leaving old skins behind as their bodies expand. Each molt is dangerous. The insect must pull itself free from its old outer skeleton, and for a short time, its new cuticle is softer and more vulnerable. Growth itself becomes a risk. The animal must change form while surrounded by hunters that would treat a soft, freshly molted body as an easy meal. So even development is tied to concealment, timing, and luck. What makes the stick insect so fascinating is that its strategy feels almost opposite to how people usually imagine survival. Humans notice dramatic animals first: the charging crocodile, the flashing lizard, the snake with bright warning bands. But the stick insect represents another kind of evolutionary success, quieter and more patient. It proves that not being noticed can be as powerful as being feared. It turns dullness into a weapon. It survives not by defeating the predator in battle, but by preventing the battle from beginning. Yet the whole system remains fragile. One wrong movement can undo hours of perfect camouflage. One bird can learn what to look for. One unlucky background can turn the insect from invisible to obvious. That is the tension hidden inside its stillness. The stick insect is not relaxed. It is living on the edge of being recognized. Every branch is a stage, every patch of light a test, every predator's glance a possible ending. In the Australian bush, the quietest animal may be performing one of the most difficult acts of all, convincing the world that it is not there. The Australian interior can make even a tough animal look small. Heat rises from the red ground in trembling sheets, spinifex throws sharp shadows across the sand, and broken branches lie scattered beneath acacia, mulga, and sun-bleached shrubs. Out here, every patch of shade has value. Every raised stone, hollow log, fence post, and low branch can become a lookout, a basking platform, or the last barrier between a reptile and the jaws behind it. The bearded dragon lives in this hard, bright country with the confidence of an animal that understands exposure. It cannot spend its life hidden completely. It needs sunlight. It needs open ground. It needs the warmth that turns a cold, sluggish body into a working machine. But the same sun that fuels it also reveals it. And in the outback, being visible is always a negotiation with danger. At first, the bearded dragon does not look like a creature built around fear. It often appears calm, almost stubbornly calm, resting on a branch or rock with its body flattened toward the heat, eyes half narrowed against the glare. Its colors can match the country around it: sandy browns, grays, ochres, dull oranges, and dusty yellows that blend into dry soil, bark, and stone. That camouflage helps, but it is not the whole story. A bearded dragon is not trying to become invisible in the same delicate way as a stick insect. It is more solid than that, more present. It survives by combining camouflage, heat management, quick bursts of movement, climbing, digging, bluffing, and a very convincing ability to look like a terrible mouthful. The spikes are the first thing a predator may notice at close range. They run along the sides of the head and body, giving the lizard a rough, defensive outline. But these spikes are not the kind of armor that can stop a powerful bite. They are not crocodile scutes or a turtle shell. They are signals as much as structures. They change how the animal feels in the predator's imagination before it ever reaches the predator's mouth. A small reptile with a smooth, soft outline looks easy to grab and swallow. A flattened reptile with a wide body, open mouth, dark throat, and spiny edges looks like work. In nature, work can be enough to keep an animal alive. Predators are often treated as if they attack anything they can catch, but that is too simple. A hunting bird, snake, fox, goanna, or feral cat is constantly making decisions, even if those decisions happen in a fraction of a second. How big is the prey? How fast can it move? Can it bite back? Will it get stuck in the throat? Will it waste energy? Is there something easier nearby? A predator that gets injured over a small meal may lose far more than it gains. A scratched eye, damaged mouth, or wasted chase can matter in a landscape where food is not guaranteed. The bearded dragon's defense is aimed directly at that calculation. It does not need to become unbeatable. It only needs to become questionable. When the threat comes too close, the animal changes shape. The body presses flat, spreading wider against the ground or perch. This makes the lizard look larger, but it also makes it harder to grip cleanly. The mouth opens, showing the soft interior and the possibility of a bite. The throat expands and darkens into the famous beard, a sudden black or darkened patch that gives the head a heavier, more intense appearance. The spines around the throat and jaw stand out more clearly. In that moment, the bearded dragon stops looking like a small reptile trying to escape and starts looking like a bad decision wearing scales. The beard is especially powerful because it is both physical and visual. The expansion changes the outline of the head and throat, while the dark color increases contrast. In bright desert and woodland light, contrast matters. A dark beard under a raised head becomes a visual warning, a way of making the animal's front end appear larger and more serious. It is not just a predator defense either. Bearded dragons use throat darkening, head bobbing, arm waving, and body posture in social communication. Males may darken their beards during territorial displays or breeding behavior, advertising dominance, agitation, or readiness to compete. Females and younger dragons can also use visual signals, though context changes the meaning. The same body language that can warn a predator can also speak to another bearded dragon across a patch of hot ground. That is one of the most interesting things about this animal. Its defenses are not isolated tricks. They are part of a broader language of posture, color, heat, and behavior. Reptiles are often wrongly imagined as simple creatures, but a bearded dragon lives by reading the world closely. It watches movement, it judges distance, It uses elevated perches to scan for food and danger. It adjusts its body position to control temperature. It can darken or lighten its body to influence heat absorption, becoming darker when it needs to warm more efficiently and lighter when overheating becomes a greater risk. In a place where the ground can become dangerously hot, thermoregulation is not a minor detail. It is survival from sunrise to sunset. Morning begins with the search for warmth. After the cool of night, the bearded dragon's muscles are slower, its digestion quieter, its reactions less sharp. Sunlight changes that. As it basks, blood carries warmth through the body, and the lizard becomes more capable of feeding, fleeing, displaying, and defending itself. But the day does not simply get better as it gets hotter. There is a narrow window where warmth is useful before heat becomes a threat. By midday, exposed surfaces can turn brutal. The lizard may retreat to shade, burrows, low vegetation, or cooler micro-habitats. It is not just living in the desert or dry woodland. It is moving through tiny climates within the same landscape, choosing sun, shade, height, or shelter as conditions shift. Its diet reflects the same flexibility. Bearded dragons are omnivores, feeding on insects, small invertebrates, flowers, leaves, fruits, and occasional small vertebrates when the opportunity appears. Young dragons often take more animal prey to fuel growth, while adults may include more plant material. This matters in unpredictable country. An animal that can feed only on one thing is vulnerable when that one thing disappears. A bearded dragon can hunt after bursts of insect activity, browse vegetation when available, and use its strong jaws to process a range of foods. It is not delicate, it is adaptable, and adaptability is one of the Outback's most valuable currencies. Still, adaptability does not remove danger. A dragon crossing open ground is exposed from above and around. A raptor may see the movement. A snake may find the scent trail. A goanna may investigate a shelter site. A feral cat may stalk with a kind of pressure that native prey did not evolve around for millions of years. Against these threats, the bearded dragon's first choices are often avoidance, stillness, cover, or escape. The dramatic beard display is usually for moments when the distance has collapsed and the animal must influence what happens next. That display carries risk. Flattening the body and opening the mouth can make the lizard look more difficult, but it can also reveal exactly where it is. Holding ground may buy time, but it may also cost time if the predator ignores the warning. The beard is not a shield. The open mouth is not a guarantee. A determined attacker can still win. That is why the performance feels so intense. It is not empty attitude. It is a gamble made under pressure. The bearded dragon is spending its last seconds before contact trying to rewrite the predator's decision. There is a harsh elegance in that. The lizard's defense does not depend on being the strongest animal in the scene. It depends on changing the scene itself. A small reptile becomes wider, a throat becomes darker. Soft edges become spikes, stillness becomes threat. A possible meal becomes an uncertain problem. This is how many animals survive in open country, not by winning fights, but by preventing them from becoming worth it. When the danger passes, the bearded dragon can return almost immediately to the quieter business of being alive. The beard fades, the body lowers, the mouth closes. The same animal that looked, seconds earlier, like a miniature desert tyrant becomes again a sunlit reptile on a branch, watching the ground with patient eyes. But the performance was not fake in the way humans understand fakery. It was real survival, built from skin, pigment, posture, and predator psychology. In the Australian outback, the bearded dragon proves that attitude is not just personality. Sometimes attitude is anatomy turned into warning, and sometimes that warning is enough to make death choose an easier path. The northern Australian bush can look almost empty at first glance, but that is the trap. Heat shimmers above the ground, eucalyptus leaves hang stiff in the dry air, and the trunks of paperbarks and bloodwoods stand like pale columns between patches of grass, termite mounds, fallen bark, and red dust. Life is everywhere, but much of it is trying not to be obvious. In this broken light, the frilled lizard does not need to look dramatic. Most of the time, it looks like part of the landscape, a slender, long-tailed reptile clinging to a tree trunk, its colors softened into browns, grays, oranges, and earthy mottling. It is built to disappear vertically, pressed against bark, where its outline becomes difficult to separate from cracks, shadows, and dry flakes of wood. Before it ever becomes the famous monster with the open frill, it is first a quiet expert in not being noticed. That matters because the frilled lizard's most spectacular defense is not its first choice. The frill is famous, but fame can make the animal seem simpler than it is. This is not a creature that spends its day flashing its neck like a performer looking for attention. Attention is dangerous. A small lizard in open woodland has too many enemies to waste movement. Birds can strike from above. Snakes can search through branches and grass. Goannas can climb, investigate, and overpower. Feral cats and foxes add a newer layer of pressure to the same old problem. A small body is always being measured by larger mouths. So the frilled lizard survives first through stillness, camouflage, height, and timing. The theater only begins when subtlety has failed. On a warm morning, a frilled lizard may rest on a tree trunk where sunlight reaches the bark. Like other reptiles, it depends on external warmth to bring its body into working condition. Heat is not background scenery for this animal, it is fuel. When the body temperature rises, muscles respond faster, digestion works more efficiently, and the animal can hunt with better coordination. It feeds mostly on insects and other small invertebrates, moving between trees and ground with quick bursts, watching for termites, ants, beetles, spiders, and anything small enough to seize. But the same sunlight that powers the lizard also exposes it. A basking reptile must always manage the dangerous balance between warming up and becoming visible. The frilled lizard's body shows that balance beautifully. Its long limbs and tail make it capable of sudden movement, but it is not built like an unstoppable runner. Its real escape plan often begins with the nearest tree. When disturbed, it may sprint upright on its hind legs, a behavior that looks almost ridiculous until you understand the mechanics behind it. Rising onto the hind limbs can help the lizard accelerate across uneven ground while keeping the body lifted and the front limbs free from interference. The tail becomes a counterbalance, the body leans forward, and the animal turns into a quick, strange shape, racing for vertical safety. There is humor in the sight, but only from a human distance. For the lizard, this is not comedy. It is a desperate route back into the architecture of bark, branches, and height. The frill enters when the predator is too close, or when running immediately may trigger pursuit. It is a structure of skin supported by long rods of cartilage connected to the jaw and neck. Folded down, it lies like a loose collar around the head and shoulders, hardly announcing what it can become. Then, with the mouth opened wide, the frill spreads outward into a broad circular display. In a fraction of a moment, the lizard's apparent size changes. The narrow head becomes the center of a wide, colorful shield. The mouth exposes bright tissue. The body lifts. The animal may hiss, lunge, sway, or hold its ground. Nothing about its actual mass has changed, but the predator's visual problem has changed completely. This is the heart of the strategy. Predators do not attack because prey exists. They attack when the odds look good enough. Every strike carries cost. Energy spent, time exposed, possible injury, possible failure, and the risk of choosing a prey item that fights harder than expected. A frilled lizard with its collar folded is a small reptile. A frilled lizard with the frill open becomes a sudden, confusing event. It is bigger than it was a second ago. It is louder. It is facing the threat directly. It seems to have transformed from a quiet lizard into a warning sign with teeth. That sudden change can interrupt the predator's commitment, and interruption is the whole point. The display works partly because it is so fast. A predator that has already started narrowing its attention must suddenly recalculate. The eye reads size before it reads detail. The frill creates an instant exaggeration of body width, making the lizard appear more difficult to swallow, more difficult to grab cleanly, and more dangerous to approach. Color can strengthen that effect, especially in individuals with brighter orange, yellow, or red tones inside the frill. The open mouth adds another layer, because mouths mean bites, and bites mean possible injury even from animals that are not truly deadly. The frilled lizard is not claiming to be armored. It is claiming for a few seconds to be not worth the trouble. But this is not magic. Bluffing is powerful only when the predator accepts the lie, and that is what makes the defense risky. If the attacker hesitates, the lizard gains time to retreat. If the attacker pushes forward, the frilled lizard has exposed itself, spent energy, and announced its position. This is the dangerous edge of intimidation displays throughout nature. They are built on the nervous systems of other animals. A frill is useless against a predator that ignores visual threats, too hungry to care, too experienced to be fooled, or already committed to the attack. Theater is never completely safe because the audience may refuse to react. The lizard's environment shapes how often this gamble pays off. In the open tropical savannas and woodlands of northern Australia and southern New Guinea, vision matters. Distances can be broken by grass, trunks, and shadows, but many encounters happen in enough light for sudden displays to be seen clearly. A fast visual signal can be effective in this kind of habitat because predators are often making rapid decisions at close range. The frill does not need to defeat every enemy. It only needs to improve the lizard's odds across thousands of encounters. One hesitation here, one missed strike there, one extra second to reach a trunk, one predator deciding there is easier prey somewhere else. There is another layer to the frill that is easy to overlook. This structure is not only about predators. Frilled lizards also use displays in social situations, especially between males. A wide frill can help communicate size, strength, and willingness to fight without immediately escalating into physical combat. That matters because actual combat is expensive. Reptiles cannot afford endless injury in harsh seasonal landscapes where food, heat, and shelter all fluctuate. A visual display allows animals to negotiate danger before bodies collide. The same structure that can startle a predator can also speak to rivals. Evolution often works this way, turning one useful feature into a tool with more than one meaning. Seasonal change also shapes the rhythm of the animal's life. In the tropical north, wet and dry seasons transform the land. The wet season brings explosions of insect activity, new growth, storms, flooded ground, and richer feeding opportunities. The dry season tightens the landscape, concentrating animals around remaining resources and making cover more brittle and sparse. A frilled lizard living through these cycles must constantly adjust its behavior: when to bask, when to forage, when to retreat upward, when to conserve energy, and when to risk crossing open ground. Its frill may be the most visible adaptation, but the real animal is a whole package of timing, temperature control, camouflage, climbing, sprinting, feeding, and threat assessment. That is why the frilled lizard should not be reduced to a funny reptile with a dramatic collar. The display is funny only because humans are safe while watching it. Inside the ecosystem, it is a serious piece of survival technology. It turns soft skin into a temporary illusion of size. It turns color into hesitation. It turns posture into threat. It turns a small animal into a decision that a predator may not want to make. The lizard survives not by becoming stronger than the hunter, but by bending the hunter's perception at the critical moment. When the frill finally folds back down, the illusion disappears almost as quickly as it came. The false monster becomes a lizard again, gripping bark, vanishing into pattern and shadow. Nothing permanent has changed in the body of the animal, but the encounter may already be decided. A predator paused, a root opened, a tree trunk was reached. In the Australian bush, that can be enough. The frilled lizard's great trick is not that it becomes dangerous, it is that, for a few seconds, it makes danger look uncertain, and uncertainty can save a life. Along the southern edge of Australia, where cold water moves through forests of seagrass and kelp, the Leafy Sea Dragon seems almost too delicate to belong to the same ocean as sharks, seals, and hunting fish. It does not rush through the water. It does not turn sharply like a predator. It does not carry the obvious armor of a crab or the speed of a fleeing baitfish. Instead, it drifts with a strange, fragile grace, covered in leaf-like extensions that ripple around its body like torn pieces of weed. At first glance, it barely looks like an animal at all. It looks like the sea itself has made a small ornament from plants, current, and light. That is the genius of the Leafy Sea Dragon. Its defense is not intimidation. It is not a warning color. It is not a last-second burst of speed. It survives by becoming visually unimportant. In a seagrass meadow or among drifting brown and green algae, the predator's eye is already overloaded with movement. Everything sways, ribbons of weed bend in the current. Sunlight breaks into shifting stripes. Tiny particles drift through the water. Shadows stretch and collapse over sand, sponge, shell, and plant stems. In that constantly moving world, the Leafy Sea Dragon turns its own body into one more harmless fragment of the background. Its leaf-like appendages are not used for swimming. That is one of the most important details, because they look as if they should function like fins. They do not. They are camouflage structures, soft visual disruptions that break up the outline of the body. The real propulsion comes from small, delicate fins that are much harder to notice, one along the back and others near the head, beating rapidly while the animal seems to float without effort. This creates the illusion that it is not swimming at all. A fish that swims looks like prey. A piece of weed that drifts looks like scenery. The Leafy Sea Dragon's entire body is built around that difference. The body shape is already strange before the camouflage is added. Like seahorses and pipefish, Leafy Sea Dragons belong to a group of fishes with long snouts, bony rings, and a very different design from the streamlined hunters around them. They do not have the powerful tail drive of a fast fish. They are not built for sudden escape across open water. Their mouths are narrow and tube-like, made for sucking in tiny prey such as mysid shrimp, small crustaceans, and planktonic animals. Feeding is quick and precise. The head angles, the snout snaps forward, and the prey is pulled in with suction. There is no dramatic chase. The sea dragon is a patient hunter of tiny lives, moving slowly through a world where moving slowly is also the safest thing it can do. That slow movement is dangerous and brilliant at the same time. A fast animal can afford to be seen if it can escape. The Leafy Sea Dragon cannot depend on that. If a predator clearly recognizes it as flesh, the animal has few dramatic options left. So the real defense must happen earlier, before recognition. Its survival begins in the predator's perception. A hunting fish scanning the vegetation is looking for the outline of prey, a body shape, a tail flick, a sudden turn, a pair of eyes, a movement that does not belong to plants. The Leafy Sea Dragon removes those signals piece by piece. Its appendages distort the outline. Its body colors echo the habitat. Its motion follows the rhythm of the water. Even its posture can make it look like drifting weed rather than a swimming animal. This is camouflage built for a moving background, and that makes it different from simply matching one color. The sea dragon does not live against a flat wall. It lives inside a shifting three-dimensional maze. The plants around it are alive with current, and the light never holds still. Good camouflage here must do more than match green or brown. It must match behavior. If the animal moved with sharp, nervous bursts, the disguise would collapse. If it held perfectly still while every plant around it swayed, it might stand out. Instead, the Leafy Sea Dragon seems to let the water carry the performance. It drifts, tilts, pauses, and glides with the soft uncertainty of vegetation. The comparison to a stick insect is tempting, but the ocean changes the rules. A stick insect hides among branches where wind may move the background, but gravity still gives the scene a certain order. Underwater, everything is more fluid. A predator can approach from above, below, behind, or through the vegetation itself. Sound travels differently. Smell and chemical traces move through currents. Visibility can change with sediment, storms, algae, and depth. The Leafy Sea Dragon's disguise must work in a world where the background is constantly being rewritten. That makes its beauty less decorative and more severe. Every delicate extension is part of a survival problem. Its small eyes add another layer of life to the illusion. Close up, the animal stops being a drifting plant and becomes unmistakably alert. The eye moves, the snout angles, the fins vibrate with fine control. It is watching its tiny hunting ground while trying not to be watched itself. This double role is one of the quiet tensions of camouflage animals. They must gather information without giving information away. They must feed, choose mates, avoid predators, and navigate habitat while still pretending to be part of that habitat. The Leafy Sea Dragon is not passively beautiful, it is actively managing invisibility. Reproduction makes the animal even more extraordinary. In Leafy Sea Dragons, males carry the eggs, but not in a seahorse-style pouch. Instead, the female deposits eggs onto a specialized brood area under the male's tail, where they remain attached and are carried until hatching. The male becomes a moving nursery, drifting through the same vegetation with bright eggs fixed beneath him. This is not just a strange fact for the sake of wonder. It changes the pressure on survival. A male carrying eggs is protecting not only himself, but the next generation. Camouflage, slow movement, habitat choice, and avoidance become even more important when the body is literally carrying future lives through predator country. The young, when they hatch, are tiny and vulnerable. They enter the water as miniature versions of a difficult idea. Survive by looking like something else before the world learns to notice you. Many will not make it. Small marine animals face enormous loss from predation, currents, starvation, and chance. The adults look like living artwork because we usually see the survivors, the individuals that grew large enough for their camouflage and behavior to become fully convincing. Behind that beauty is a harsh filtering process. The ocean is not gentle because an animal is beautiful. Beauty here is just the visible surface of pressure. The greatest weakness in the Leafy Sea Dragon strategy is that it depends on the habitat remaining believable. Camouflage is a partnership with place. If the seagrass meadow is healthy, if algae forests remain complex, if water clarity and plant structure stay within the range the animal's body is built to imitate, the illusion holds. But when habitat changes, the disguise can weaken. Seagrass loss, coastal development, pollution, sediment, warming waters, storms, and changes in marine vegetation do not simply remove shelter. They can damage the visual language that the animal depends on. A sea dragon shaped like drifting weed needs a world where drifting weed still exists. That is the darker truth beneath the beauty. The Leafy Sea Dragon is not separate from its environment. It is so deeply tied to the texture of that environment that its body almost reads like a copy of it. Remove the background and the animal becomes exposed. Change the stage and the performance begins to fail. This is why habitat protection matters so much for species like this. Conservation is not only about saving the animal as an object, it is about saving the relationship between body, behavior, light, plants, prey, and predator perception. Watching a leafy sea dragon move through seagrass can feel peaceful, but the peace is deceptive. Every slow drift is a survival decision. Every leaf-like extension is part of a disguise built over generations. Every tiny fin beat keeps the animal in the narrow space between being seen and being understood. A predator may pass close enough to strike, yet fail to separate the animal from the waving plants around it. That failure is the sea dragon's victory. In the end, the leafy sea dragon survives by making itself almost irrelevant. It does not frighten the hunter away. It does not punish the bite with poison. It does not outrun danger. It convinces danger to search somewhere else. In Australian waters, where sunlight breaks across seagrass and the whole world moves like a living curtain, one of the most beautiful animals on Earth survives by pretending to be nothing at all.